Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
A new lawsuit claims San Diego's safe sleeping sites for homeless people aren't so safe after all. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The suit was filed by people living at the city-run campsites who call the conditions there inhumane. KPBS reporter Tammy Murga says they're demanding improvements.
Laura Zaletta says she can't survive without her walker. She's on her fourth one. She says it's because the cracked and hot asphalt at San Diego's safe sleeping camps peels the wheels. She sometimes hears rats outside her tent and has experienced harassment.
Something has to be done about these places. At times I felt I was safer sleeping on the street than I am in there.
Zaletta and 7 other homeless people are suing the city of San Diego and 2 organizations it hired to run its safe sleeping camps. Residents allege in the lawsuit that camps are rodent-infested and lack adequate food, shade, and shelter.
We are here today to shed light on a grave injustice hidden out of public view.
Ann Menaggi is an attorney representing the residents. Clients with disabilities have told her about some of their experiences at the sites.
Showers are full of rust. The one disabled shower was broken for 2 months, causing serious health problems for disabled residents who had no way of staying clean.
In an emailed statement, spokesman Matt Hoffman told KPBS the city takes any claims of unsafe conditions seriously. He says they have increased pest control services and have cleanup protocols at the sites. He did not immediately respond to questions about the lawsuit. Zaletta says she just got approved for permanent housing. She hopes that speaking out about her experience will lead to improvements for future residents. Tammy Murga, KPBS News.
For the first time in nearly 15 years, San Diego County is getting new fire hazard severity maps. County supervisors are set to approve the changes today. The update shows a 26% increase in land now considered at very high risk. The fire marshal says even some coastal communities are being affected. That's partly due to the new Ember model used for these maps.
When it transitions from what we call wildland, non-wild land, which would be where vegetation transfers into, like denser communities and developed areas, that's where that Ember model takes over. And depending on the adjacent vegetation and the weather and the wind direction and the average wind speed is how far those embers will transmit into the built environment.
CAL FIRE is reminding all we are still in peak fire season. They say due to all the heat this season, vegetation is dry and ready to burn.
Well, we're continuing to talk about that monsoonal moisture bringing showers, even some thunderstorms. We've had some severe weather the last day or two. We could see another day of some severe thunderstorms and flash flooding, but I'll break down exactly what to expect and when we dry out once again coming up.
The Secretary of the Navy is in San Diego this week visiting sailors and Marines all across the county. Secretary John Fallon spoke to sailors on the waterfront today on board the USS Somerset. He says he wants to hear from troops how things are going.
But I'm hoping to learn from them. Look, what I want to understand is why'd you join? Are you going to stay? What can we do to keep you? Why, what are the good parts of the job? What are the bad parts of the job? How do we get better? How do we iterate and improve? How do we move quicker?
In his comments to the sailors, he talked about plans to increase the shipbuilding and the role of artificial intelligence in the Navy. Over the next couple of days, the Secretary plans to visit sailors at Special Warfare Command, Naval Air Station North Island, and tour Marine Barracks at Camp Pendleton. An audit in 2023 found serious issues at animal shelters run by San Diego County. KPBS reporter Scott Rodd says the audit was buried and the problems persist.
The county's Department of Animal Services hired an outside consultant to examine its 2 shelters and recommend improvements. The consultant was alarmed by what they found at the 50-year-old shelter in Bonita. Overworked employees were cleaning dog kennels using a hose while the dogs were still inside. Animal care experts contacted by KPBS were dismayed. The Association of Shelter Veterinarians calls the practice unacceptable.
Which means if you're doing this, you need to stop immediately.
But 2 years later, the shelter is still hosing down kennels with dogs inside.
The fact that they're still doing an unacceptable practice even after the audit highlighted that it really, paints kind of how much they're struggling there.
The audit also found dogs without beds, leaving them to sleep on concrete floors. KPBS confirmed during a recent visit to the shelter that the vast majority of dogs still do not have beds. Longtime animal law attorney Bruce Wagman says this should have been an easy fix.
No matter what the shelter, they should have beds. Everybody should have a bed. And that doesn't seem to me like a big expense or anything you can't do.
County spokesperson Tammy Glenn confirmed in an email that the audit never made it beyond the Animal Services Department. County supervisors and other officials did not receive a copy. In a statement, Glenn said, quote, "Some initial improvements were made based on the observations of the consultant during visits to the shelters, and the department looks forward to identifying additional opportunities."
And joining me now in studio is KPBS investigative reporter Scott Roth to discuss this story further. Welcome.
Thanks, Maya.
Alarming stuff, but this reporting builds on an investigation that you previously did last month that looked into dog euthanasia in San Diego County animal shelters. Can you remind us what that investigation found?
That's right. We looked at euthanasia rates for dogs in the county's two animal shelters, the one in Carlsbad and the one in Bonita. And what we found was going into the pandemic, the euthanasia rate at these shelters actually was starting to decline. Coming out of the pandemic, we found that there was a sharp spike among dogs, the euthanasia rate for dogs. It actually more than doubled. And so we found that last year, the euthanasia rate was 12% for dogs. It had dropped a little bit following that to about 10%. And we found that the majority of these cases were actually dogs that had behavioral problems. And a number of former employees and volunteers raised concerns to us about the rationale for euthanizing some of these dogs. Some of them, for example, were maybe growling at someone or had fear or maybe separation anxiety. And we just heard from folks that they were concerned that the rationale didn't always rise to the level of justifying a euthanasia.
I see. Now, how did you discover this audit from 2 years ago?
After our investigation came out, I had heard whisperings and murmurs that there was this audit out there, so I was digging around and I'd asked the county for a copy of it. I didn't end up getting it from the county, but I did get it from another source. And when I got it, I was pretty surprised because it laid out a bunch of issues that we had seen weren't addressed. And so we wanted to dig into, well, what ended up happening with this audit and why weren't some of the most serious issues addressed in these last couple years?
Now, based on your reporting, speaking of addressing, the county said that it made some improvements to the animal shelter operations based on that audit. So what were some of those?
That's right. So staffing was a big one. So the audit found that the staffing retention and the staffing rates just wasn't enough to support operating two shelters in the county. Last year, the staff turnover rate at the shelters was 70%. In the first 6 months of this year, it's down to 22%. So they're on a better trajectory. They also doubled the number of volunteers that are working with their foster program. So it's gone up to about 500 volunteers. They're still well short of how many animals that they want to foster or keep in foster homes. They want it to be at about 50%. They're well short of that, but they are expanding that program. They've also added toys and bones into the kennels for enrichment. And maybe the big thing is that they're building a new shelter, which is expected to be open in mid-2026. That'll replace the Bonita shelter, and it's supposed to be newer, state-of-the-art. And so I think the idea is that the kennel issues that we're seeing in Bonita won't be an issue at this new shelter.
Well, we certainly hope so. But what else did experts tell you after they reviewed the audit?
So as you heard, some of those experts said these issues, they need to be addressed, and some of them, really without exception, they need to be addressed immediately. But they also said the shelter industry is really difficult and shelters are up against it. That's how one of the experts put it to me. They have a really hard mandate. One said that shelters are like the dumping ground for animals that people don't want, and yet the public has a high expectation for these shelters to treat them with dignity and to try to get them adopted out. So the experts said, yeah, there are issues here that need to be addressed, but also let's keep it into context. It's part of a bigger problem when it comes to animal welfare, and shelters, while they play an important role, it'll take a much bigger effort to try to address some of these problems when it comes to animal welfare.
Some really good points there. Some great reporting, Scott. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maya.
And if you have a tip for KPBS's investigations team, you can send an email to investigations@kpbs.org, or you can message them on our secure signal line at the number that you see on your screen, 619-594-8177.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook pledges to fight back against President Trump's attempt to oust her. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Yes, and in that unprecedented move, President Trump says he's fired Fed Governor Lisa Cook, citing allegations of mortgage fraud. Here's Brian Abel on whether the president has the authority to fire her as she vows to fight back.
No president has fired a Fed governor before. The Federal Reserve has been independent of the executive branch since 1951, and it's unclear if President Trump has the ability, the legal authority, to fire Lisa Cook. There's legal ambiguity of what justifies for cause, the only avenue for the president to legally fire her. The allegations stem from Cook's 2021 mortgage applications before she joined the Fed. A CNN review found she listed 2 separate properties as her primary residence. And that's the alleged fraud Trump refers to in his letter firing her, accusing her of making false statements and being deceitful because she could have received better interest rates for primary versus secondary residencies. Cook, who was appointed to a 14-year term by then-President Joe Biden in 2022, is denying the claims and has not been charged or convicted with anything. In a statement, Cook said, "President Trump purported to fire me for cause, when no cause exists under the law, and he has no authority to do so. I will not resign." If Trump is successful in firing Cook, the first black woman to have the role, it would give him a majority on the influential board of governors of the Fed as he looks to further pressure the Federal Reserve into lowering interest rates. At the White House, Brian Abel reporting.
The Trump White House recently published a list of artworks in Smithsonian museums in Washington, D.C. that it deems objectionable. KPBS reporter Julia Dixon-Evans spoke to one of the artists who sees the actions as a distraction with serious risks.
Cross-border artist Hugo Crosthwaite was commissioned by the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery to create a portrait of Dr. Anthony Fauci, which was unveiled in 2022. As a stop-motion animation, it's unusual for an official portrait, but Crosthwaite says the format is perfect for someone with a legacy like Fauci, spanning the HIV/AIDS epidemic to COVID-19.
And it's me placing him in history and not just, standing him out of history.
Earlier this month, the White House announced a comprehensive review of Smithsonian museums to ensure the institution, quote, celebrates American exceptionalism and removes divisive or partisan narratives. Last week, the White House posted an article titled, "President Trump is Right About the Smithsonian," listing works and programs focused on race, immigration, and sexuality, including Crosthwaite's stop-motion portrait.
I got the feeling that even the Trump administration hasn't even seen the portrait. It seemed to me like they just saw, oh, this is about Fauci, then we hate it.
Crosthwaite says the move is designed to instill fear, but believes that governmental control of art could lead to significant consequences.
It's this idea of that trying to rewrite history, trying to erase our diverse experiences, our diverse history. They want the general public to forget the ills of our past, and to follow an agenda that is not based on the realities of the United States, of our nation. And the danger of that, of course, is that we're condemned to repeat terrible mistakes if we don't look objectively at our history.
The upside, Crosthwaite says, is that the controversy is bringing more attention to the art and its message.
And I think that truth and beauty in the end is going to, win.
Julia Dixon-Evans, KPBS News.
And Julia is the host of the KPBS Arts Podcast, The Finest. You can listen at kpbs.org/The Finest or wherever you get your podcasts. Change is coming to Claremont. San Diego City planners recently released a draft update to the Claremont Community Plan. It would rezone many of the neighborhood's strip malls and shopping centers for higher density housing. But KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says in western Claremont, by the Blue Line trolley stations, the neighborhood would remain mostly unchanged.
So right now we're standing in the Home Depot shopping center. What I'm seeing right now is a lot of empty parking spaces.
Ian Grooms is a lifelong resident of Claremont. We meet at a shopping center at Genesee and Balboa Avenues, where city planners are proposing what they call a community village. Acres of asphalt could be replaced with a mix of apartments, retail, offices, and public plazas. Grooms is all for it.
I think it's important for us as a city to turn underutilized parking spaces into possibilities. There are so many people who can't even afford to live in Claremont. They can't afford this $1 million neighborhood.
Grooms developed an interest in urban planning after watching his neighbors rise up in opposition to a number of affordable housing developments in Claremont. We see one of them just across the street.
So many people were concerned about that development. They were concerned that it was going to, ruin the character of our neighborhoods. And then what is it doing? It's actually providing a roof over people's heads. It's allowing people who are at risk of homelessness to have a home at night.
Despite all the additional density proposed for central Claremont, the vast majority of the neighborhood would still be zoned for low-density single-family homes, including this neighborhood right across the street from the Blue Line trolley.
I feel it's more of a political capitulation than it is smart policy making.
Nicole Capritz is executive director of the nonprofit Climate Action Campaign. She recalls more than a decade ago, San Diego was debating whether to allow taller and denser development around the future trolley stations in western Claremont. Taxpayers were spending $2 billion extending the Blue Line, and the city wanted to let more people live within walking distance. But the backlash from homeowners was fierce.
People's belief in the worst case scenario from their perception sort of drove the conversation. And I think then it made the city uncomfortable and nervous and kind of shrink back.
Capritz appreciates the small pockets of density the city is proposing immediately adjacent to the trolley stops. But she says it's not enough. San Diego has one of the most popular light rail systems in the country, according to national ridership data. Banning apartments or even townhomes just a 5-minute walk from that transit doesn't make sense to her.
The city has goals around housing, which they're nowhere close to meeting. The city has goals for how they're going to reduce carbon pollution, which they're nowhere close to meeting. And we have this deepening affordability crisis. And so when you marry all of these challenges, the city can't respond with small fixes.
The debate over transit-oriented development is not isolated to Claremont. State lawmakers, frustrated by the slow pace of home building, have proposed SB 79. It would overrule local zoning to allow apartments of up to 6 stories within a quarter mile of a trolley stop.
We need more affordable housing in California, but Senate Bill 79 is not the answer.
This video from a group called United Neighbors shows AI-generated images of towers popping up in suburban neighborhoods.
SB 79 will impact everyone, everywhere. We don't need to ruin the neighborhoods we have to get the affordable housing we need.
We have valleys and different topography that only local people know.
Marcella Bothwell of Neighbors for a Better California says local planners know better than state lawmakers what their communities need.
When you're in Sacramento, you don't know what's going on the ground. You don't know the topography. You don't know the conditions or concerns. And so you have to listen to people who are living there.
I distinctly remember coming to this parking lot to pick out my Christmas tree every year.
As Ian Grooms enters the workforce, he's left wondering whether his life in Claremont will become just a childhood memory.
As somebody who just graduated college, it's extremely important for me to find an affordable home. I can't afford many of the homes in our region, and for me, this is about making sure that I can live in the city that I love and in the community that I love.
The Claremont Community Plan update is expected to go before the City Council in the fall. SB 79 awaits a vote in the State Assembly. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Hundreds of Imperial Valley residents were still without power today after a fierce monsoon storm struck the region yesterday afternoon. More than 4,000 people reported losing power after heavy rains and thunderstorms washed through the valley. That's according to IID, the regional power utility. The outages stretched from Calexico to the north end of the Salton Sea. IID spokesperson Robert Shetler says they've been able to bring most of those homes back online, but in an interview this morning, he said they're still working to restore power to 400 customers.
We have 298 power poles that are down. So that's something we need to rectify. But our immediate concern is getting power back on to everybody who doesn't have it.
The outages come as the Imperial Valley continues to face some sizzling temperatures nearing 100 degrees. Many residents rely on reliable power supply to keep cool. Shetler says customers should make sure to notify IID if they lose power and should visit a county cooling center if they need to.
Well, the monsoon moisture, it is here to stay for another day or two at least. More rain and thunderstorms in the forecast, which does mean we could see some more severe thunderstorm warnings, some more gusty winds. We could see some more flash flooding. So things to keep in mind and kind of plan for as you're going about your next day or two. We do see a little bit more of a warming trend as we get later into the week as we dry out, see that moisture disappear. The humidity, that's another factor we've been dealing with. I know you've been feeling that kind of sticky, uncomfortable feeling when you step outside. That doesn't last too much longer either. But let's go ahead and start with what to expect for tonight overall temperature-wise. We're in the mid-60s in Oceanside and San Diego, mid-70s for somewhere like Borrego Springs, and the 50s in Mount Laguna. Taking a look ahead to tomorrow, we're in the 80s across the board closer to the coast. San Diego not quite getting to that 80 degrees, but Ramona we're in the 90s, getting close to triple digits in Borrego Springs. However, we're not quite there. It's a break from the triple digits, one of the positives of the monsoonal moisture. Now, let's take a look at future radar, give you an idea of kind of what to expect. It's not an all-day kind of rain event. As we go through the rest of the evening, we could see a few showers, maybe a thunderstorm or two. Then we head into tomorrow, another scattered shower or two in the afternoon. We see more of that rainfall come into our area by the time we get to the evening hours. Then the rain and thunderstorm chances decrease as we head through Thursday, Friday. Can't completely rule out a shower, a thunderstorm or two, but we're seeing that monsoonal moisture kind of exit our area a little bit. Taking a look at your 5-day outlook on the coast, we stay sunny, temperatures in the 80s. We go from 81 Wednesday to 85 by the time we get to Thursday, kind of bouncing back and forth between the low and mid 80s. A little bit farther inland, well, we're in the upper 80s Wednesday, Thursday. We get back to the 90s by the time we get to our Friday. Now, a lot of the rain and thunderstorm chances, they're going to be in our mountain regions, and it's not enough to be registering on any of the icons on our 5-day. However, everybody could see some showers and thunderstorms Wednesday. Very scattered again, why it's not registering on the icon. We could see more of those showers and thunderstorms, more isolated to the mountain regions by the time we get to Thursday, maybe Friday, but again, those chances decrease as the days go on. Temperature-wise, we get back to the 80s by Sunday in our mountain regions. The desert, we get back to the triple digits by the time we get to our Friday, so enjoy this break where we have temperatures in the 90s. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather's Anna Azalian.
Veterans from across the country are in San Diego this week for the annual VA Summer Sports Clinic. KPBS military and veterans reporter Andrew Dyer was in Coronado for the start of one of the events.
This is way out of my comfort zone. I don't tend to socialize very much anymore.
Army veteran Rodney Johnson is pretty new to adaptive sports. Johnson lives in rural Wisconsin and uses a wheelchair. For the first time earlier this year, he took part in the VA's wheelchair games. That's when he was offered a spot this week in San Diego for the Summer Sports Clinic.
But here I could feel comfortable. There's nobody judging me.
Johnson's one of 150 disabled veterans in town trying out a variety of adaptive sports, such as surfing, sailing, and kayaking. Johnson and about 24 other veterans are going cycling. The nonprofit Wounded Warrior Project sponsors this event. Marine Corps veteran Mike Owens is the nonprofit's director of adaptive sports. He says getting active can be life-changing for people living with disabilities.
You hear about people that maybe touched cycling a few years ago, and now they're being re-engaged in it to get, more mobility. And then individuals like myself, where it just completely changed their lives. They love cycling. It is their whole world back home and here.
Air Force veteran Tessa Grauman lives in Richmond, Virginia. It's her first time at a VA sports clinic, and she says it's opened up a lot of new possibilities.
I'm definitely looking forward to surfing, and it's something that you never thought you would do or you never thought you could do. And I'm old now, so, the idea of doing new things didn't seem like it would be possible, maybe.
Johnson says the clinic gives the veterans a chance to create their own community.
The overall thing that I found with both the wheelchair games and this here is to be able to talk to the vets and listen to the different stories, and then look at some of the guys and what they have, they're dealing with, their adaptability, and I look at mine and go, oh, I can do this. And that's what kind of inspired me up to get back into cycling.
Grauman says it's more than what she expected.
Surprisingly, I thought that learning how to do all the activities was going to actually be the highlight, but I've been here just a couple days, and I feel like I've just made lifetime friends.
Johnson says he hasn't felt as connected since he was on active duty.
Stepping out of my comfort zone and coming here, and then meeting familiar faces and meeting new faces, we all have something in common, so it's easy to connect with these guys and ladies. So that's what I really like about it, is just the camaraderie. It kind of gives you the feel about being back in the service, where you've got your backups, you've got your friends. These guys will be there for you.
The summer sports clinic runs through this week. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Tripolsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.